Law enforcement, isn't it interesting now that this feature is released just in time, just as they released that? Now, as they point out, it's possible for Google to submit to a legal demand. Of course, it is possible for them to do it. They don't have any legal liability anymore because of CISA. And of course, that allows the government, even if the company was not a willing participant in this, even if they hadn't been involved in this, which I believe from the very beginning, nevertheless, the government could hold a gun to their head and say, you don't have any legal liability. Why would you withhold this? You better not withhold it, turn it over. So now it's possible for them to submit a legal demand to Google for location history that is greater than 6 months old. And this is a report that was written by a law enforcement trainer, Aaron Edens. And he provides detailed guidance for law enforcement, the police, on the wealth of historic location information that is available through Google Timeline and how they can request it. So now law enforcement will get all the information that it wants about you. Yeah, we the people don't know anything about what our government is doing, what the military is doing, or what the militarized police are doing. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk about Ben Carson's resume gate. We're also going to talk about climate change and the panic that is beginning right now as a buildup to the Paris conference at the end of this month. And later in the program, we're going to have an extended interview with Roger Stone. He's a political consultant to presidents since and including Richard Nixon. He was a former campaign advisor to Donald Trump. We're going to talk to him about Donald Trump, and we're going to talk to him about his books, the one that's just been released, The Clintons' War on Women, and his upcoming book about Jeb Bush, Jeb and the Bush crime family. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Unfortunately, you've grown up hearing voices that incessantly warn of government as nothing more than some separate, sinister entity that's at the root of all our problems.
It's time to stop submitting to this tyranny. It's time to realize that we're being enslaved.
Some of these same voices also do their best to gum up the works. They'll warn that tyranny is always lurking just around the corner.
Tyranny with a capital T.
You should reject these voices.
Everything that's been done with torture, rendition, the NDAA, the Patriot Acts 1 and 2, from day one was focused on the American people, period. That's it. It's always been about erasing the Bill of Rights and Constitution and rolling out NSA spying publicly, saying it's for Al-Qaeda, rolling out torture, saying it's for Al-Qaeda, but it's really for the general public, rolling out total control and the end of any underground free market systems in the name of fighting Al-Qaeda, but really shutting down any type of free commerce. This is all about converting us from a free society to a tyranny with a capital T.
Clean, pure drinking water. You can't survive without it. But where do you get it? Alexa Pure Pro is a brand new, groundbreaking, gravity-fed water filtration system that is like no other. The Alexa Pure Pro transforms water from virtually any fresh source into clean, healthy drinking water, pairing the unprecedented superfiltration power of an all-new gravity block core with a hybrid chromatic shell. It removes up to 99.999% of impurities, including bacteria, viruses, fluoride, disinfectants, volatile organic contaminants, and hormones. Filter capacity up to 5,000 gallons. Stainless steel construction. easy assembly, low maintenance, replacement filters are simple to install. And now, as part of an exclusive limited time introductory offer, you can save $20 off the retail price and get free shipping. This is a limited time offer, so order your unit today and receive free shipping and $20 off. Go to InfoWarsStore.com or call 888-253-3139. The knowledge of the ancients, tried and true, trusted herbs and extracts fused with the latest nutraceutical science. Introducing the all-new Ancient Defense Herbal Immunity Blend, crafted with over 14 key ancient herbs and extracts to supercharge and prepare your body for what experts admit is the most dangerous season of the year. We have rejected hundreds of other formulations in our quest to bring you what is simply the most powerful and comprehensive proprietary formula that we have ever created in the realm of herbal immunity. For the last 2 years, our team has been working with top doctors, nutritionists, and chemists to develop the ultimate nutraceutical formulation. Experience the benefits of combining over 14 ancient herbs and extracts with exciting new advances in nutraceutical science. Now is the time to secure Ancient Defense for you and your family. Visit ancientdefense.com or call 888-253-3139. That's ancientdefense.com. Introducing Secret 12, the new InfoWars Life Vitamin B12 formulation. Most forms of vitamin B12 are highly processed and synthetic and could not be properly absorbed by the body. That's why for real results, so many are having to turn to painful B12 injections, which are known to have higher absorption rates. Now, InfoWarsLife.com is excited to announce that we can bring you our most bioactive, powerful form of B12 that has been developed with our exclusive perfected process. Secret 12 is a binary of nutramedical grade, bioavailable coenzyme forms of B12, methylcobalamin, the same kind used in B12 injections, and adenosylcobalamin. Secret 12 is simply taken by mouth, right on the tongue, and then swallowed. No needles, no injections. Don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself. Discover the secret. Secret 12. Secure your revolutionary Secret 12 formula right now at InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.
Is it fair to question a resume candidate on his resume? Ben Carson is a resume candidate. He's running on himself as a person, talking about how honest and how humble he is. Is it fair to question the details? Of course it is. Let's get over this idea that there is some objective media out there. The leftist media is going to vet the GOP candidates very hard, just like the conservative media vetted Obama. But that doesn't give anyone an excuse to say, hey, the media let Obama get away with lying. Why can't I lie too? In my opinion, that is essentially what Ben Carson is saying, but I think it tells us something about us as well. I think it tells us that not only is the media biased, and we refuse to admit that there's a conservative as well as a liberal media, there's a Republican and Democratic media, but we also need to understand that the American people don't want to hear this once they get invested in a particular candidate. Just as the left didn't want to hear anything negative or questionable about Obama's secret past, they also don't want to hear anything about their current candidates. They just stop their ears and say, I'm not listening, don't talk to me about it. Well, you need to look at what these people who want to exercise power over you, you need to look at what they're proposing to do, but you need to also look at them carefully if they're running as a resume candidate. Now, the Wall Street Journal points out Ben Carson's past faces deeper questions. This is what his campaign manager, Barry Bennett, said on Friday. He said, there's no facts saying they are not true. We are guilty until proven innocent. You have no reason to believe that they're not true. There is no evidence to point to the fact that they're even questionable. Well, I question it. And let's listen to what he told Sean Hannity, how he explained this when questioned.
In your book, Gifted Hands, that you were 17 years old and you were introduced in 1969 to General William Westmoreland, who had just ended his command with the U.S. forces in Vietnam, and that you dined together. Is that true?
It may well have been, but what I
mean, did you hear that? When Sean Hannity asked him point blank, is that true? And Ben Carson said, well, it might have been. Really? Seriously? He wrote this in a book. He put it in writing. He's been using this in multiple speeches over the years. I guess the question I have is, if you're not sure of the details, and he goes on to say, it was 40 years ago, I'm not really sure of those details. It could have been true. It could have been true, and that's what his campaign manager says. Prove that it isn't true. Well, if he admits that he doesn't remember the details, why should we have to prove that it's not true? And it makes absolutely no sense. But of course, I guess the other part of this is, why does he feel compelled to brag about what he did in junior ROTC 40 or 50 years ago? Really? Seriously? Who cares? I mean, would you care if I was running for president? I talked about my band medals that I got in high school. It's absolutely insane. But it gets worse than this. They point out in the Wall Street Journal, in his 1990 autobiography, Gifted Hands, Mr. Carson writes of a Yale psychology professor who told Carson, then a junior, other students in the class, identified by Mr. Carson as Perceptions 301, that their final exam papers had been inadvertently burned, requiring all 150 students to retake it. The new exam, he recalled in the book, was much tougher, and everyone walked out but Ben Carson. Now, when I read this to my family, they went hysterical laughing. I mean, this is a narrative that is questionable. It is questionable. So you ought to have a way to back this up. And it gets even worse. It gets even more hysterical. He said, the professor came toward me. With her was a photographer for the Yale Daily News who paused and snapped my picture. A hoax, the teacher said. We wanted to see who was the most honest student in the class. And Mr. Carson wrote that the professor then handed him a $10 bill. Really? Really? I mean, does that sound plausible at all to you? It doesn't. Yale students 40, 50 years ago would be competitive enough that they would not walk out of an exam because it was tough. Okay? Then they go on to say, this is when they vetted him. They said, well, there's no photo identifying Mr. Carson in the paper. There was no class called Perceptions 301, said the librarian Claren Spies on Friday. There was no psychology class of that. See, that's the problem that you get into. Now, when he pushed back on this, what he did, amazingly enough, was he responded to this by posting on Facebook a parody of this situation. And what happened with this, according to his explanation, according to this newspaper clip, was the Yale Record, which is a parody newspaper, made a parody of the real school newspaper, the Yale Daily News, doing an exact copy of it, saying that some students who were in a psychology class would have to retake the exam that had been lost. Okay, now, the question is, it still doesn't exactly match the details, the elaboration, the need to boast. That should be raising red flags for people all over the place. But if that's true, understand that what Ben Carson is telling us is that he was owned by an Onion type of publication, that he went back and he took an exam that was a hoax, and he still, 40 or 50 years later, doesn't get it. Well, you know what I don't get when Ben Carson says on Friday, let's talk about issues here that are really substantive. When he looks at the TPP, and in less than 24 hours, he says, it's great, I support that. Because remember, back earlier this year, he says, well, I'm not really sure that we should go with this. He now has aligned himself with the GOP's establishment wing. In less than 24 hours, he looked at the TPP, and he says, I can go with that. Now, Breitbart did a great example of this because the TPP is huge, or as Donald Trump would say, huge, right? 6,000 pages. Do you realize how much that is? Well, let's try to put that in some examples. They point out that it is 3 times bigger than the King James Version of the Bible. Let me ask all the Christians out there who support Ben Carson. Have you ever read the King James Bible cover to cover 3 times in one night? Do you think you would understand it? Do you think you would understand this highly technical legal document and be able to read that in one night? No, no. Here's some other examples. It's 6 times longer than Obamacare. It is 4 times longer than the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Hobbit. 4 times longer than that. And it is 4 times longer than the complete works of William Shakespeare. But, you know, Ben Carson honestly took a look at that and said, yeah, you know, I could go for that. I was opposed to that before, but I can see I was wrong now. You know what he did? He just put a big for sale sign around his neck. He just said, I'm for sale to special interest, to the multinational corporations who wrote this agreement, to the GOP establishment, to the donors that I would like to have. Just like Jeb and Rubio and these other people have done with this. He has basically put a big for sale sign around his neck, and he has become a political whore. And that's what you need to understand about Ben Carson. Rand Paul slams Rubio over the Obama trade. He said we should read legislation before we vote on it. Oh, that was back in June of this year when they passed the Trade Promotion Authority. And this is what Rand Paul said at the time. He said, I have a bill called Read the Bills Act. In it, there's a requirement that you have to wait 1 day for every 20 pages of legislation. So let's talk about those numbers. If you took a day to look at each 20 pages of this agreement, and that would not be unreasonable since this is a highly technical legal document. And one person from New Zealand who looked at this said, unless they give us the accompanying